human brain is designed for survival. It's not designed for success. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. That's your job. Right. And the only way you're going to do it is if you feed your mind, because otherwise weeds grow automatically. My coach, my mentor, Jim Rohn, used to tell me, so Tony, every day you got to stand guard at the door of your mind. You got to watch what's going in, because if you're not careful, stuff will go in. And he said, not all the times it's somebody who cares about you. He said, if your family, if your worst enemy puts sugar in your coffee, he said, what happens? I said, you got sweet coffee. He goes, what if your best friend by accident, or your family, don't mean to, they drop one drop of strychnine in your coffee, you're dead. He said, so life's sugar and strychnine, and watch your coffee, right? So every day I decided, I'm old enough, honestly, there was no internet those days. I'm pretty ancient. I used to go to the library, because it's the only place you go. And I'd read biographies, I'd read people's lives, and it'd make me go, wait a second, as bad as I think it is, the greatest people in the world had it worse. Sure. So there's something here. So you feed your mind. Jim Rohn used to say to me, skip a meal, but don't skip reading. He said, read 30 minutes a day, I don't give a damn what it is. And today, I don't mean internet crap, I mean, read something, a biography, read something that's a strategy, read something that's going to change your life. And the second thing I tell people is feeding your mind's great, but you've got to also strengthen your body. And you do that as an athlete naturally. I learned to do that because fear is physical, right? You know where you feel it. And if you go work out, if you go lift, if you go run, even if you're out of shape, you just go for an intense walk, that experience alone changes your life. Every day of my life, the first thing I do before I do my priming, if I'm at one of my homes, I jump in some hot water for fun, and then I jump in freezing water. And I have, a river, on one of my homes in Sun Valley, and I've got cold plunges everywhere else. So I go in 57-degree water, boom. And what it does is it's teaching my brain, I tell my brain what to do, and it does it. It doesn't feel like it, doesn't want to do it, and every cell in your body is alive, right? So it doesn't have to be 2 hours worth of something. It can be something you do for 30 seconds, but it's training your body to be strong, because a strong body creates a strong mind, and vice versa. Yeah. The third thing I tell people is find a role model. It seems impossible until you see somebody who's done it. So, Ray Dalio is one of the greatest investors in history. The guy was a caddy, right? His dad was a jazz musician. His mom was a homemaker. He's worth $14 billion. He found someone to mentor him. He found multiple people to model. Right. You don't always find a mentor, but you find somebody you can model. And when you start seeing that somebody else can do it, and you see they really did, you start to believe, you start to get certainty. And then the fourth thing I tell people is it's massive action and constantly change your approach. And then it's find somebody worse off than you are and help them. Because when you do that, it gets you out of yourself. And that's what I really have people do. That's what we do at Thanksgiving. We have our basket brigade where 2 million people get fed. Amazing. Not the one I do, the one that I get people to do. And it's amazing. People go in there and they see, my God, I thought my life was tough, but look at this person's life. It makes you appreciative. It puts life in perspective. I've discovered that some rules will never break. And the reason is, if we break them, we believe we'll get massive amounts of what? And those rules, for example, I call threshold rules. You should put this in your notes. There are certain rules we believe we must never break. Certain things we believe we must do always, because if we don't, we're going to get massive pain. Massive pain. So, for example, in a relationship with another human being, man-woman relationship, committed relationship, most people in that relationship have a rule that says, I must never, let's say, sleep with another human being, other than my wife or other than my husband. For other people, that's a should not. Is that true? Yes or no? Which means the must never person would have so much pain, it would just absolutely destroy them to do that themselves. So that's why they never will. It's not just because they love their spouse, it's because they would give themselves so much pain if they broke that rule. How many follow that? The person who has should not will also beat themselves up. They won't feel good about it, but they'll do it anyway if they get into state. That is, if somebody approached them and boy, they were really infatuated with this person and they were unhappy at home, they would violate it because it's a should not. Now, which person's right and which one's wrong? That's not the way to evaluate. You're being unfair. If you grew up with their background, you'd probably have their rules. How many would agree? So making somebody wrong is not going to make it better. That doesn't mean you have to agree with their rules, but you better know what they are if you're going to be in a relationship with them. Does that make sense? Okay? So if it's a should not, it's going to happen. It could happen, I should say. They're not going to feel good about it. They're not going to be proud of it. They're not going to make it right. But they're going to also say, yeah, but I need my needs to be met, and I really love them. It doesn't mean I don't love my husband, but this person here really loves me and gives me the attention I need, or wife, or whatever. You get the idea? So the same thing goes true in virtually every area of our life, including eating. And if a person is presently not producing the result they want in terms of their physical body, it's because they probably have must rules that are limited and should rules that are a lot. You find somebody who's thin and healthy physically, you'll find out the only difference is not the people, but their rules. Because the person who's thin has a lot of must rules around how they need to be healthy, and probably only a few shoulds. Well, let's find out if that's really true by doing an example. Okay, so it's not right or wrong, because when you see what this is, it'll really probably help. So Dawn, and by the way, Dawn knows what the rules are to be thin also. If I ask Dawn, what must a thin person do to stay thin or healthy, she can tell me, but those aren't her rules. But they may become her rules. She may decide to change her rules once she identifies them. So let me tell you the word I've discovered. I listen to people, right? And whenever they're going along, when they said there's something they would never do, I noticed they use the word must a lot. Must never do that. I must do this all the time. That's the threshold rules. Must, write them down. Must always, must never, must not. So it's must always, must not, must never. So today, I was obsessing about how can I give you in an hour and try and get this to the real hour we promised, and give you massive value. And the subject, first of all, is the most important subject, I think, because day one was all about emotional fitness, right? And then yesterday, uncovering what gets in the way, the beliefs that can screw you up. So in order to change your story and keep a new story, you need a new set of beliefs. And then making some new decisions yesterday. Now, let's say you've gotten good at that. Oh, it's so nice to see so many people here. Nice to see you, Karen. Nice to see you, Mike. I see these really happy faces. You're changing my state just to see how happy you are. This is beautiful. Hi, MB. Good to see you guys. But the bottom line is the subject we're going to talk about today is relationship mastery. And this is an area where you start to think you're really good at mastering things, right? And you finally got your own emotions where you feel like I'm in charge. I can get my head together. I can deal with the challenges. And then you fall in love with another species, right? Someone who's from another planet who looks at the world completely different. In the beginning, with all the chemicals, it's easy, right? But then what happens is you start bouncing in each other's models of the world, but you're different, and conflicts start to show up. Who here has experienced immense pain in an intimate relationship before? Raise your hand, make a little noise. Who here has experienced some of the greatest joy or pleasure in your life in a relationship? Make some noise, right? So it's the place where we get the most pain and pleasure. Why? The reason why is, remember the other day I mentioned to you the deepest fear all human beings have? There's two primary fears. Yes, we're afraid of rejection, we're afraid of pain, we're afraid of loss, we're afraid of not looking good, but the two primary pains they all come down to is number one, the fear that we're not enough. In fact, in your original stories, on the very first day, so many of you, your old story was, I'm not enough, or worried you're not enough. And that is not because there's something wrong with you, it's the human experience. When we're born, what do you got to do to be loved when you're a baby? What do you got to do? Come on, guys, what do you got to do? Nothing. You scream and somebody loves you. You vomit green vomit on their neck and your mom and father and they still love you, right? You crap your pants, they love you. You're fat and bald and people love you. Try that when you're 50, see how it works. You get the idea? So in the beginning, you can do no wrong because your mother and father are full of drugs called oxytocin, normal human drugs that make you love that child even though they look like a lizard. Right? But you think they're the cutest thing in the world. Have you ever seen a mom who didn't think their child was absolutely perfect, no matter what the child looks like, right? So have this first experience where everything in our life was, we're just loved no matter what. And then one day the oxytocin wears off. And that's a rough day, right? Because when the oxytocin wears off, all of a sudden, you do the same thing you did before, but instead of someone loving on you, they yell at you. Or they smack you, or what's worse than being smacked or yelled at? They ignore you. And so really the secret to all this, I'm seeing some people saying they're not getting the sound, guys, so I'm seeing some motions here from lots of people on Zoom. So I'll slow down just for a second. I'm seeing there's no sound. Help unmute Tony. Is it back? Are we back, guys? Awesome, thanks for the feedback. This is why it's good to have visuals. So anyway, the bottom line is, if we're going to be able to feel or deal with our lives, this fear comes because as a child we get left for nothing, and then one day the oxytocin wears off, and now we're not paid attention to or yelled at, as I started to say, I hope you heard it, or we're ignored. And so that produced fear in your body. And so the fear everybody has is I'm not enough, and if not enough, I won't be loved. And many of your stories are all the ways you're trying to be enough to be loved. So who can give you more pain, more fear in your body? What can take a giant warrior to their knees? Loss of love from someone whose love they crave. right? To feel like you're not enough for the one you crave. Who's ever felt like you were not enough for someone whose love you desire deeply here? Say, It's one of the worst feelings in the world. But we can change it if we understand it's not about chasing someone else. It's not about getting them to behave a certain way or treat you a certain way. The state of the union, the way in which you interact with another human being, the state of the union is your state. You have to own 100% responsibility. You go, Tony, but I'm with a jerk, I'm with an idiot. If you're truly with someone who doesn't share any of your values, is really unkind, then it's time to make a move.
And so you're full of biological potential that won't be realized unless you move yourself around in the world into different challenging circumstances, and that'll turn on different circuits. So it's not merely that you're incorporating information from the outside world in the constructivist sense.
It's doing that which resonates with your heart, that provides some quality of service to others. When you're doing that, in my life, I help people to change their lives. And when I do that, love, happiness, and inspiration are perfumes you can't sprinkle on others without getting a few drops on yourself.
Your days are the pockets and instruments of genius. Get those right, your life will take care of itself.
You got to detach a little bit when you're training, detach a little bit. And see what is going on in your mindset. See what red flags that you can see, what things will make you aware of the fact that your nerves or your adrenaline and you're feeling yourself clenching your fist. Okay, so I'm clenching my fist. Be aware of it so that you can change it, so you can adjust it. And put yourself into these scenarios and escalate them so they get harder and harder and harder and worse and worse and worse until you start to get control of these things.